The clack of Clara Evans's shoes against the hospital tiles reverberated like rolling thunder as she burst through the doors of St. Mary's Hospital in London. Her arms clutched little Sophie Sterling, her 7-year-old ward, whose fragile body trembled with shallow, uneven breaths. Clara's heart pounded violently, as if it might tear through her chest. "Please, someone help us," she cried, her voice raw with panic. Nurses sprinted forward, and a gurney appeared almost instantly. Clara gently laid Sophie down, her hands shaking as the child's golden curls fanned across the crisp white sheet like scattered sunlight. A doctor in a crisp white coat leaned over Sophie, then looked up at Clara. "What happened?" Clara's throat felt parched, dry as sandpaper. I don't know. She was playing in the garden. Then she collapsed. I thought maybe it was her allergies." Her words dissolved into sobs. "She won't wake up." The doctor barked swift commands, and the room was instantly filled with the acrid scent of antiseptic, the squeak of rubber saws, and the rush of urgent movement. Then came the words that froze every heart in the room. "She's been poisoned," the doctor said, eyes wide, voice clipped with shock. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe, like, share, and comment your thoughts. Back to the story. The hospital fell silent, as if the building itself had sucked in its breath. Clara staggered back, her mouth agape. Poisoned? That couldn't be true. Sophie was just a child. Innocent, full of life. Who would want to harm her? The antiseptic sting seemed sharper, the fluorescent lights harsher, pressing down as though the world had suddenly grown cruel. Clara's hands shook as she grabbed the nearest counter to steady herself. The faint beeping of monitors down the hallway punctuated the heavy silence, ticking like a clock counting down to disaster. Before she could gather her thoughts, the doors burst open again. Julian Sterling stormed in, his entrance as violent as a thunderclap. His face was flushed, his tailored suit wrinkled, eyes wild with panic. A man used to control, used to power, now rendered powerless by fear. His polished shoes squealed against the linoleum as he shoved past nurses without a word. "Where's my daughter, Sophie?" His voice cut through the sterile air, jagged and sharp. His gaze swept the room, searching for answers, then landed on Clara. Grief twisted into something darker. His lips curled, hands trembling, he pointed at her. "You? What did you do to her?" Clara blinked, stunned as though slapped. "Mr. Sterling. No, but she didn't get to finish." Julian lunged. The movement was so sudden, driven by desperation, that for a heartbeat Clara was frozen. His fists clenched, and he slammed her against the wall. The drywall shuddered. Her breath escaped in a strangled gasp. "I trusted you with her life," he thundered, filling the corridor, rattling inside her skull. "And now she's dying in there." Clara's tears streamed as she struggled to breathe under his grip. "I love Sophie like my own child. I would never hurt her. Please, you have to believe me." "Believe you?" Julian spat the words like venom. His grief had warped into rage, monstrous and unrecognizable. "You're nothing but the help. Don't you dare lie to me." A nurse screamed for security, her voice sharp with panic, shoes squeaking as she ran down the hallway. The room vibrated with tension, as though the entire hospital had paused to witness this violent outburst. Then another voice cut through like a blade. "Enough." Leo Vance, Clara's closest friend, appeared like a storm breaking. Tall and steady, his dark eyes blazing with controlled fury, he charged forward. He yanked Julian back, prying his fingers from Clara's arm with iron grip. "You lay another hand on her," Leo growled, low and dangerous, "and you'll regret it." Julian's face twisted, caught between rage and shame. His chest heaved, breaths jagged. For a moment, he looked like a man drowning in grief. Then, as he realized all eyes were on him, he retreated, stumbling slightly. Clara collapsed into Leo's arms, trembling from head to toe. Her sobs shook her chest, voice broken into whispers. I didn't. "I know," Leo murmured, hands steady on her back. He turned toward Julian, sharp and unwavering. "She didn't do this. I'll find out who did." The weight of that promise pressed on everyone in the room. From that moment, the truth had to be uncovered. The following days blurred into chaos. Sophie lay under constant watch, her tiny body dwarfed by machines. Doctors fought a silent battle to keep her alive. The rhythmic beeping of monitors became the delicate line between hope and despair. Clara barely left the hospital. She spent nights by Sophie's side, whispering prayers into the sterile air, clutching the small pink ribbon that had fallen from Sophie's doll, a fragile lifeline, yet unbreakable in her hands. She remembered Sophie's laughter, the way her curls bounced as she skipped across the yard, the way she clung to Clara when afraid. That innocence didn't deserve this cruelty. Every time Clara gazed at the child, a new ache split open her chest. Julian kept his distance, his grief still wrapped in bitter layers. Yet, when he lingered near Sophie's bedside, Clara occasionally glimpsed something different in his eyes. Perhaps shame, maybe a flicker of doubt at the man he had allowed himself to become. True to his promise, Leo began investigating. He understood Clara better than anyone. The depth of her kindness, the patience she carried, the gentle way she braided Sophie's hair, a tenderness money could never buy. Clara could never harm that child, and he refused to let lies define her. He called in favors, spoke with hospital staff, cross-checked timelines, and scrutinized grainy security footage that flickered with shadows and hidden truths. He retraced every step of Sophie's last day before the collapse. Gradually, the fragments of truth began to assemble, like shards of glass forming a broken mirror. One night, Clara sat with Leo in the hospital cafeteria, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of untouched tea. The hum of vending machines filled the quiet. "They'll never believe me," she whispered, staring into the steamless cup. "I'm just the nanny. They've always seen me as less." Leo leaned closer, his voice calm but unwavering, as if the words themselves could steady the air. "You're not less. You're stronger than any of them. And I'll make sure they see that." Leo's search led him to Isabel Reed, Julian's executive assistant. Polished and immaculate, Isabel projected loyalty in her sharp suits, sleek hair and clipped voice, making her seem untouchable. But beneath the surface, bitterness festered. Years ago, Julian had made a quiet decision in a boardroom, far from public scrutiny, a decision that had cost Isabel's brother his life in a corporate accident conveniently swept aside. Grief had twisted into resentment, which turned to obsession, and finally to vengeance. She hadn't harmed Sophie out of hatred for the child, but as a cruel way to wound Julian where it hurt most. Through innocence, through love. She had slipped the substance into Sophie's drink with a calm smile, hiding decades of rage behind a mask of professionalism. When Leo confronted her, the mask cracked. The coldness in her voice faltered, replaced by a trembling whisper. "He destroyed my family. I wanted him to feel it too." When the truth finally reached Julian, it was as if the ground had shifted beneath him. His chest seemed to cave, his carefully constructed world crumbling into dust. He had accused the wrong person, and worse, he had brutalized her with his words, his hands, his prejudice. The man who had condemned Clara now stood before her, eyes lowered, voice trembling. "I was wrong. Blinded by grief and hate. Clara, I'm sorry." Clara's lips quivered, her hands clutching the edges of her sweater. Her voice broke under the weight of betrayal. "Your words nearly destroyed me. You saw my skin before you saw my heart." Julian nodded, broken, unable to meet her gaze. "I know. I'll carry that shame forever." Clara wiped her tears, her breath shaky, yet her spine straightened. That day changed her. She understood the danger of silence, the weight of prejudice, and the fragility of truth. From that pain, she built something new. She began to speak, first in small gatherings of nannies and housekeepers, then in churches and community halls. Her words carried a fire drawn from wounds demanding healing. She spoke of the injustices domestic workers, especially women of color, faced, their devotion often met with suspicion, their voices silenced. Her courage birthed the Hearthstone Project. It started with a few women sharing stories over mugs of tea in her living room, but it quickly grew into something larger, impossible to ignore. Just when Clara thought the battle was over, another storm emerged. An anonymous whistleblower revealed a chilling truth. Isabel's act was part of a broader plan orchestrated by a man named Harrigan, a strategist with cold eyes and even colder ambition. His goal was simple: weakening Julian, making him vulnerable, and paving the way for a corporate takeover. Isabel had been just one pawn in his twisted game. Suddenly, Clara, Leo, and the now repentant Julian found themselves unlikely allies. Together, they confronted the shadowy force known as the Aegis Conglomerate, a machine designed to silence, intimidate, and erase anyone daring to expose its crimes. At first, they tried to discredit Clara. Smears filled the press. Headlines painted her as unstable, greedy, dangerous. Television pundits sneered, twisting her story into spectacle. Strangers whispered in grocery aisles. Even old friends doubted her. But truth has a way of clawing into the light. Clara's courage became impossible to ignore. Her voice shattered the walls of lies. And those who doubted her began to see. As Aegis grew desperate, their attacks intensified. One night, flames engulfed the small Hearthstone Project headquarters. The fire roared skyward, painting the night with black smoke. Clara stood amid the ashes. By morning, her face was streaked with soot and tears. The walls had vanished. Photos were reduced to ash. The tables lay charred and broken. Yet instead of crushing her, the devastation ignited something far greater. The fire became a symbol, a beacon for all who had once been unseen. No blaze could erase this movement. With Leo's tireless drive and Julian's resources, Clara reached whistleblowers long silenced by Aegis. Their stories poured in like an unstoppable flood. Men and women who had lost jobs, families, even freedom, simply for daring to speak the truth. Together, their voices merged into a powerful chorus. Evidence stacked up, irrefutable, weighty as stone. Then came the tribunal. The hall overflowed. Reporters jostled for position, workers clutched their signs, and citizens who had followed Clara's fight pressed shoulder to shoulder. The air buzzed with anticipation. The whir of cameras, the scratch of pens. When Clara stepped forward, her voice trembled at first, but with every word her courage grew. She recounted injustice. The night she carried Sophie to the hospital with her heart breaking. She spoke of false accusations, of wounds racism had etched into her soul. She spoke of bravery, of how even a single trembling voice could ignite a revolution. Her testimony burned through lies, cutting past the polished defenses of the powerful, until the truth stood bare in the light. That day, Egypt's conglomerate fell. Its shadow dismantled, its crimes exposed. When the government passed the Clara Evans Act, a federal law shielding whistleblowers and domestic workers from retaliation, the world knew her name not as a victim, but as a warrior. Clara stood on the tribunal steps. The crowd roared. Leo by her side, Julian quietly observing from the back. Flashbulbs exploded. Voices carried her name like an anthem. She lifted her chin, tears sliding down her cheeks, this time tears of victory. One person refusing to be silenced, she whispered to herself, can change everything. The Hearthstone Project flourished, spreading across cities and borders. It became a movement for all silenced voices. Clara led it with grace, strength, and the unwavering belief that muted voices could rise in harmony. And Sophie, sweet Sophie, recovered. On a bright afternoon, her curls glinting in sunlight, she ran into Clara's arms. Clara lifted her high, twirling her as Sophie laughed. I love you, Clara, she whispered. In that embrace, Clara felt the truth etched into her soul. Love is stronger than hate, truth stronger than lies, courage stronger than fear. What do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below.